Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special Kentucky Oaks edition of Out of the Gate. I'm your host, Stan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Let's take a look at what's on tap in this special Out of the Gate. DRF handicappers Mike Beer, Matt Bernier, and I will take a look at 5 of the 6 graded stakes races at Churchill Downs on Friday. The one we won't cover, don't worry about it. The Twin Spires Turf Sprint. We've got an expanded stakes preview up at video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. We've got all sorts of perspectives on the Kentucky Oaks. Nicole Russo will look at it from a pedigree perspective. Craig Milkowski from Timeform US analyzes the pace. David Aragona, of course, looks for value in his Timeform US spotlight. Let's get ready. We got a lot to cover, so let's break out of the gate. We begin the Kentucky Oaks edition of Out of the Gate fittingly with Friday's race of the day, the Grade 1 $1.25 million Kentucky Oaks. 3-year-old fillies going a mile and an eighth, carded as race number 11 at Churchill Downs. 6:12 Eastern is the approximate post time for expanded stakes previews of all the graded races at Churchill Downs this weekend, plus Mike Welsh's Clocker Report, the Matt Bernier Show, and lots more. Visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike Beer, there appears to be a lot of speed in this race. That does not deter you from picking the speed of the speed.
We'll see. I hope that she's the speed of the speed. Motion to motion, the pace scenario is obviously disadvantageous for her in this race because she wants to be on the lead and there's plenty of pace for her to contend with. But I think she might be able to get to the front here. Mike Smith, if nothing else, is going to let her do her thing because that's what he does. He's going to put her on the front. Let's look at her most recent race, the Fantasy. She ran great in here. It's the second time in a row where she went too fast early and she just couldn't hold on at the end. I think in each of her last 2 races, though, she was best and she didn't win either time. She might be in for more of the same here, guys, but I like this horse. I'm hoping that she can get to the lead, and maybe they just don't come after her too hard early in here. If she can get any kind of a breather, I think she could be pretty tough to deal with in this race. She's a talented filly.
Key to the race is whether a horse like Serengeti Empress is going to be hell-bent on the lead, a horse like Jaywalk, who, of course, wired the Breeders' Cup juvenile fillies. But you look at the Timeform US pace ratings for Motion to Motion, they are astronomical, out of this world. If she runs any of those, she's going to make the lead. Matt, you scored last time out with Lady Apple. We saw that beautiful ground-saving run. We'll see it again. She's very professional. She's got a nice pedigree, and she is slowly climbing the right way.
That's kind of the reason that I just feel like she's trending the right direction. And like you say, we just saw the replay there where Motion to Motion was out there on the front end and Lady Apple was able to shoot inside. That, to me, that's kind of an important piece. Some horses, that's an uncomfortable trip being down in there. She continues to just take the incremental steps forward, and that enough for me. At 20-1, I think she got a big chance. And if she gets that pace in front of her, I think she'll come with a run.
Let's take a look at my top selection for this race. That's the number 10, Champagne Anyone. And Champagne Anyone earlier this year we thought might be just a one-run closing sprinter, but Ian Wilkes kept the faith, gradually stretched her out in distance, put blinkers on last time out, and lo and behold, Champagne Anyone was able to get the 2 turns going a mile and a 16th at Gulfstream. We go to that race right now. She showed a lot more early speed with the blinkers. She's able to collar this speed horse turning into the stretch. That's a talented horse on the outside, going to make a run at Champagne Anyone, but Champagne Anyone is resolute. She gets the job done. She held firm on the gallop out, and she seems to be training very well coming into this race. She can adapt to any kind of pace. I'm expecting a hot pace. I think Champagne Anyone's going to be coming from off the pace, and I think she can get it done for Chris Landeros and Ian Wilkes. We'll turn back in distance on the Oaks card and take a look at the 8 Bells Stakes next. Let's throw up the field for the 8 Bells Stakes for 3-year-old fillies going 7 furlongs. It's a Grade 2, carded as race number 5 at Churchill Downs on Kentucky Oaks Friday. $250,000 is the purse. For expanded stakes previews of all the graded races, including the 8 Bells, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt Lyrical Lady showed big speed in her career debut at Saratoga last year. Disappointed in her first start against winners. Something must have happened. She went to the sidelines for a long time. She came back with gusto at Oaklawn. Are you concerned about a speed duel, though, on Friday?
Oh, I mean, that's kind of the big elephant in the room. There is some other speed signed on in here, but there's a part of me that just feels like she might be the speed of the speed, might be able to clear off. Let's go back to the Oaklawn race. Keep in mind, this was her first start since the middle of August as a 2-year-old. She ran into Brill, and I know Brill was prepping for a longer race, but Brill is a nice horse, and she never got within shouting distance of Lyrical Lady. The way that I'm drawing this up, and I'm hopeful anyway, I hope Ricardo Santana sends hard. I hope she just kind of turns off everyone else early on. She's just fast enough that she can go clear off to the front and say, come and catch me. I was taken by this effort. I think she could be the goods.
I think she's got quality as well. Steve Asmussen has done very well in this race in the past. Mike, explain what happened to your top selection last time out.
I guess she just doesn't want to go that far. They tried to stretch her out in the Grade 1 Ashland. It didn't work out, and she was basically eased in that race. Prior to that, this filly did absolutely nothing wrong, won each of her first 4 starts. I'm hoping the exact opposite of what Matt's hoping for. I'm hoping that people go after Lyrical Lady in this race, and the 7 furlongs proves to be too much for some of these horses, because I don't think it'll be too much for Bells to One turning back in this race. Let's go back to her second career start. This is off of her maiden win at Keeneland. She traveled very strong in this race from off the pace. She came with a strong 3-wide move on the turn, and she kept going through the stretch to take this thing over. I liked this performance. She came right out of this and won a stakes race at the fairgrounds, sprinting on the dirt with a similar sort of move. Rated early, came 3 wide off the turn to take it over, and kept going through the stretch. I like her turning back. I'm hoping she catches some pace.
I liked what I saw from this filly in this race, but boy, that last race, she's just going to have to rebound, and she's got the ability to do it based on her first few starts. I went with the horse based at Gulfstream over the winter. That's Queen of Bees for trainer Jorge Abreu, and she won her maiden 2 starts back in very fast time, came back to beat winners in her first start against them. We'll take a look at that race right now. And this track at Gulfstream on January the 31st, every race on the main track was won by speed except this one. Queen of Bees came from mid-pack with a wide run in a race that didn't feature much pace, and she professionally draws away from this field going a mile. I like her better at the 7 furlongs. I think there is going to be a good pace for her to attack, and I think she'll be running late. The caveat is this. After this race, she got sick, she missed a start. They were going to run her in the Beaumont at Keeneland. It came up wet. They didn't want to run her there. So she's coming into this race off a little bit of a layoff. I trust Abreu, who is a bright trainer and a former assistant to Chad Brown. I think the price will be right. I'm hoping for some pace for Queen of Bees in the 8 Bells Stakes. Nicole Russo is going to take a look at the Kentucky Oaks from a pedigree perspective, and then Craig Milkowski from Timeform US projects the pace for the Phillies Classic.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this spring's final edition of the Oaks Countdown, and we are now in the final countdown. The field for Friday's Philly Classic was drawn Monday morning in Louisville, Kentucky. A full field of 14 plus 2 also eligibles entered. If you've been following along with colleague Dan Illman and I this winter and spring, we've extensively analyzed the racing records and pedigrees of the top contenders, including morning line favorite Bellafina. She is perfect this season. You'll take a peek at her here rolling home in the Santa Anita Oaks last out. The multiple Grade 1 winner, beautifully bred for the distance, as she looks to give sire Quality Road his second Oaks winner in 3 years. But to add to your notes for this race, I want to circle back around and take another look at a filly who Dan and I long expected to progress with distance and with experience, who did so in her final prep, and who will have even more distance and experience coming into the Kentucky Oaks. I also want to take a look at another filly who should love the added distance, who is looking to bounce back off of poor final prep and why she might do so. Now, the first filly is a horse we started talking about more than a year ago when she appeared on Keeneland Babies. We said this may foal by classic sire Curlin is a well-bred filly, several stakes horses in her family, but she's not going to be an early 2-year-old. She's going to be so much happier when she gets to go long. That's exactly what happened with Lady Apple. 3 consecutive wins at Oaklawn this season, the 2 most recent of those around 2 turns, topped off by this win in the Fantasy last out. Now that day, Lady Apple broke from post 4 in the field of 11 and came through inside in the lane where she was in tight at the 16th pole. I think this is going to be an experience that will benefit her as she's drawn toward the inside in the full field for the Oaks. We've watched her development for a long time, and I think it'll be quite logical for her to keep moving forward. Now, Chocolate Kisses also ran at Oaklawn over the winter. Her biggest career win coming in the Honeybee, going a mile and a 16th. But then she finished 6th in the Ashland, and Trainer Mark Cassie said that he probably made a mistake that day, telling the rider to try and stay a little closer to the pace because of a perceived track bias at Keeneland, taking Chocolate Kisses out of her usual running style. He has said all week that Chocolate Kisses will be going back to the back of the bus on Friday, and she should have plenty of pace to run at with the likes of Serengeti Empress, Jaywalk, Motion Emotion, and even Out for a Spin in here. I do love this filly's pedigree going long. She's by Candy Ride, a winner at 1.25 miles, whose foals can win at that classic distance, as evidenced by champions Gunrunner and Shared Belief. Her dam is graded stakes winner Brownie Points, who could also go 2 turns on dirt. She's already produced turf grade 2 winner Synchrony and stakes winner Point System. A lot of turf in this family, but this filly obviously trends toward the dirt. We're filming this early in the week, so still plenty to keep an eye on as you formulate your picks for the Kentucky Oaks. But those, just some details for thought, having watched these fillies all along as they've developed. Thanks for joining Dan and I all along this year on the Oaks Countdown. I will be back next week here on DRF TV with the DRF Breeding Report to bring you more analysis of the eventual Oaks and Derby winners.
Hi, this is Craig Mulkowski of Timeform US for this special Kentucky Oaks edition of Out of the Gate. In my Pace Projector segment today, I'm going to take a look at the Kentucky Oaks in a race that just looks like it's going to have a really fast pace. These are the kind of races we love at Timeform US. You can see on our preview page in the upper right-hand corner the flag where it says Seat Details as in red, which indicates a fast pace. And I've highlighted some of the main reasons for that here on the preview page. You see we have 4 horses identified as leaders, horses that really like to lead their races, try to go wire to wire. And I've underlined them all in red, and I'm going to take a look at each of them individually. Now that label of leader doesn't always necessarily mean that horses shown in the front will be leaders, or that leaders can't be shown somewhere else. It also looks at the velocity the horses have run. But in this case, those horses take up the first 4 spots. Let's take a little bit closer look at the pace projector. You can see I've highlighted those 4 horses who are shown right up front. They show varying amounts of speed, and we're going to take a little bit closer look at each of them. The first one is Motion Emotion, the 8 horse in here. She's coming in from Oaklawn Park, where she's just been running really fast. I personally don't think she's a win contender. She hasn't been able to hold on at 1 1/16 despite setting clear leads early. She went really fast back in the Honeybee. You can see the fractions highlighted in red there. But she is certainly going to be a pace contender and is the likely leader in my opinion. I agree with the pace projector on this one. The next horse we're going to talk about is the 7 horse Jaywalk, the 2-year-old filly champion from last year. She won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies wire to wire. She's been in some races with some fast paces. She doesn't necessarily need a slow, easy lead. But the one thing she has shown is she hasn't passed a horse yet. In a route race. She did early in her career in sprints, but I also think she's a horse that wants to lead. She's 3rd off the layoff. I expect her to run pretty well, but I think it's going to be a tough task given all the other speed in here. So I'm also going to be against Jaywalk, but I do think she's going to run well, and I think she's a horse that's certainly going to be part of the pace. Once again, we have Serengeti Empress, the 13 horse. She's definitely a need to lead type in my opinion in here. She's run very well when she gets a clear early lead. She's done it going fast. Last time out in the Fairgrounds Oaks, she bled after leading early in a spot where she seemed like a lay over the field. She was 1-5 that day. But she bled, gave up, kind of spit the bit there, and her day was done. But she's reportedly been training well. You'd expect that if she's being pointed to a race like the Oaks. So once again, I see no reason not to think she won't be contending for the early lead, and the pace is almost certainly going to be fast. Now the 4th horse that's shown as a leader in here is a horse who's likely going to be the post-time favorite and was a morning line favorite, and that's Bellafina. I'm not necessarily sure she's a need-to-lead type. She has come from a little bit off the pace a couple times, once at 7 furlongs at Santa Anita, but also last time in the Santa Anita Oaks. But I'm a little bit leery of her in that, for one, the competition was sorely lacking last time. She really laid over the field. And I also am not sure she wants a mile and an eighth. Her speed figures have been declining as the distances got longer. Granted, she only ran that 108 last time. She did what she had to do. She won really easily. It would have been pointless trying to match that 118 or whatever she ran 3 starts back. But she did fail her major test so far in her career, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, where she pressed a fast pace before backing out of it. And while I think she's a worthy favorite based on the past performances, I'm going to look elsewhere, once again due to the pace, which I just think is going to be red hot. And the horse I'm going to go with is the 14 Restless Rider. I really liked her comeback in the Ashland Stakes at Keeneland. She ran a career best 110 time form U.S. speed figure. She wasn't able to quite get up. She lost to Out for a Spin, who's also in that race. And though we don't have the race coded as bias that day, I don't think it was a speed bias. There's no doubt it was. It was a little bit tough to run down horses that day. I think it was a fast track, and it was maybe slightly slanted towards the inside. And I think it was a good run from her. Like I said, this will be second off the layoff, and I'm expecting a top effort. That 110 time form US, if she can increase that to a 115, which I fully expect, she's going to be very tough to beat, and she's going to be my selection. The other horse I'm going to use a little bit is Chocolate Kisses, and this is strictly a pace setup. I'm going to use her in my exotics. If she's a huge price like her morning line suggests she will be, I'll play a small win bet on her. She got a very similar setup to what I expect here in the Honeybee at Oaklawn. She came from well back to win. Last time out at the Ashland in that same track I mentioned with Restless Rider, she was a little bit closer than I think she wants to be. She switches to jockey Julian Leperoux for this race. I think I'll have her further back, and if she gets that pace set up that we're looking for here, I fully expect a better run like we got at Oaklawn as opposed to that one we got last out at Keeneland. That does it for me for this special edition of Out of the Gate for the Kentucky Oaks, and I'll see you tomorrow when I talk about the Kentucky Derby.
Are you a horse player looking to raise your game? For over 120 years, expert handicappers have relied on Daily Racing Form as their must-have source for news and data, featuring exclusive buyer speed figures, time form US pace figures, and integrated replays. DRF Formulator is the most powerful handicapping tool on the market today. Use what the pros use. Go to drf.com/formulator and enter code DRFTV to get your first card free. drf.com. Raise your game.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate, and it's quite possible that the most talented 3-year-old filly on the Kentucky Oaks card will not be competing in the main event, the Kentucky Oaks. Let's throw up the field for the Edgewood Stakes for 3-year-old fillies going a mile and a 16th on the turf. We're going to talk a lot about Newspaper of Record, the undefeated odds-on morning line favorite, and Way the Horse to Beat. But before we do, Mike, let's talk about some horses that might be able to upset her if Newspaper of Record isn't ready to fire in her seasonal debut. The second choice, Cambier Park, sold for a lot of money at public auction and is also trained by Chad Brown.
Yeah, I mean, she's got some things going for her. She has a really nice pedigree. They paid a lot of money for her, and she's obviously very well connected. And she's 2 for 2 on turf, and she's a graded stakes winner. We'll take a look at her most recent start. This is the Grade 3. Here Comes the Bride, and she's a nice winner of this race. She is second fastest coming into this race based on figures. This race to me was okay. I thought it was a little more workmanlike than it was anything else. She sat close to a relatively soft pace and she got it done. A nice horse. I think she's way up against it though, against her stablemate.
Matt, Concrete Rose has only run one bad race in her career, and I think you can give her a mulligan, because that race was in the Breeders' Cup over a boggy turf course, and we saw a lot of horses just had trouble handling that course over Breeders' Cup weekend. She's got recency over Newspaper of Record. Can she turn the tables?
No, I don't think she can, but I agree with you. She does have an excuse for that run in the Breeders' Cup because of that turf course. There's no guarantee that she was going to appreciate that. Her most recent run, though, in the Florida Oaks, I think there's reason to believe that she's coming into this in good form. Let's go to that run down at Tampa Bay Downs. You see her as well as Winter Sunset. Winter Sunset is no slouch either. She's the daughter of Winter Memories. The problem for both of these girls, as well as they ran here, and as promising as I think both of them are going forward, I think they're running into an absolute buzzsaw. I don't care about the layoff for newspaper of record. I just think they're both going to need to run the best race of their life and have newspaper of record throwing a complete dud.
And according to the Mike Welsh Clocker report available at drf.com, newspaper of record is working in sensational fashion for her seasonal debut. And Mike, not only is she the best horse, she might just get loose on the lead.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot pointing to her in this race, obviously, based on what she did as a 2-year-old. And all 3 of those starts, open length wins, are every bit as good as they look on paper. This field they really can't beat her if she comes back in that kind of form. We're going to take a look at the third of those 3 races last year. This is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Irad didn't play any games in this race. He put her right on the lead. He was confident with her underneath him the entire way, and then he left this field for dead in the stretch. This was a really impressive performance with a 96 buyer. And listen, I don't really think there's any reason to believe she won't come back at least as good as a 3. We'll see. Maybe she won't, but if she does, this race is for second.
I think the other thing to keep in mind, it sounds like there is some weather in the forecast for Friday and Saturday. Obviously, we're talking about Oaks Day here on Friday. All 3 of her wins have come on yielding turf. So if the turf does come up on the boggy side, that shouldn't be any kind of an issue. It's an absolute pipe dream that you're going to get 3 to 5. You're looking at 1 to 10, if not 1 to 20. But I'm just excited to see her probably more so than any other race the entire weekend.
Sometimes better short price than long face. I concur with the guys. I think newspaper of record's just going to go to the front, and hopefully she puts on a show and leads us to believe that there's going to be some excitement in the 3-year-old filly turf division this spring and summer in New York for Chad Brown. That's newspaper of record. We return to the main track for the Alysheba Stakes up next. Let's throw up the field for the Alysheba Stakes on the Kentucky Oaks Undercard, carded as race number 7. $400,000 is the purse. We're going a mile and a 16th. 2 p.m. Eastern is the approximate post time for expanded stakes previews of all the graded races from Churchill Downs this Derby weekend. Head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt, the number 2, Tom's d'Etat, brilliant but brittle. He's had his share of injuries. I'm willing to forgive his last race because I just don't think he liked that wet track at all.
Well, and it was also against just the best of the best, the City of Lights, the Accelerates. He's going to get a little bit of class relief here in this race on Friday. The problem is I just still don't know if he necessarily classes up. When he's at his best, he can do something like this. Now, we're going way back. Let's throw up the replay from Saratoga. This is in 2017. And again, it's only a 5-horse field, but he goes out there and absolutely buries them all. 106 buyer, 128 raw time form rating. I guess the question is, look, if it rains, great. It's going to be no issue for him. You see him skipping over the mud right now. The question I have is he actually of graded stakes caliber, or is he one of those horses that does his best and beats up on inferior company? We'll find out on Friday.
Now, after the Pegasus, he was going to run in the New Orleans handicap. It's been reported that he came down with a foot abscess, so he's coming into this race perhaps off less than ideal preparation, but for an excellent under-the-radar trainer in Al Stall. Mike, McKinsey is one of the better older horses in training. We've always liked him at slightly shorter distances. He's getting a cutback off the big cap.
Yeah, I think that could be key, as well as a little bit of class relief here. He's not going against gift box in this race. It just, in a lot of ways, this just feels like the right spot for him. He's going to be a very short price in here, but I just felt like he was pretty tough to go against. Let's go back to that last race. This is the big cap on April 6th. And, I thought he got maybe a little bit of a strange ride where they took him back from the rail, but he also runs pretty well. You can see him coming up now to the outside of gift box. It looks like he's going to go by. He will just miss a head bob at the end of this race. And as you've already mentioned, Dan, this might be a little far for him. The shorter distance works for him. He's got the inside post. He's got tactical speed. And he just might be better than these horses.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind with this horse, you brought up that tactical speed, Mike. There's not a ton of speed in this race, so if Prime Attraction wants to go, so be it. You sit off him, you take advantage. If for some reason Prime Attraction doesn't break, you're down on the rail. I would imagine Mike Smith will be aggressive with him. I'm kind of on board with everything that you said. I had a difficult time going against him. He checks all the boxes, and I do like the turn back in distance.
He is way the horse to beat, but one of my favorites is running in this race. That's the number 8, Seeking the Soul, who did not pick up his feet at all in the Dubai World Cup. I'm just going to draw a line through that race. I'm going to say he didn't like the track, didn't like racing without Lasix. Fine. Didn't like the trip. He's run well at Churchill Downs in the past. We're going to go back to the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile from last year, and that's a really nice horse on the lead named City of Light. Seeking the Soul was steady a little bit on the turn. He's coming with a good solid run to finish second. He's going to turn back a hardy horse in Bravazzo to secure the place. He came out of this race. They ran him back too quick, I think, in the Clark handicap, and I think he was just flat. He returned off that race facing City of Light again in the Pegasus World Cup, and I thought he ran very well over a wet track that day. He was down towards the inside, steadied a little bit at the quarter pole, and came running along for second. He has races good enough to win this race. He just needs McKinsey maybe to get softened up a little bit in the early portion. But I'm hoping Seeking the Soul can rebound as he gets back to Churchill Downs. He is a multiple graded stakes winner over this surface. David Aragona of Timeform US spotlights the Kentucky Oaks, and then we'll be back with one more stakes race, and it's a good one, the La Troienne.
Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona with this week's Friday Timeform US Spotlight. I'm going to be taking a look at the main attraction on Friday's card at Churchill Downs, the Grade 1 Kentucky Oaks for the 3-year-old fillies. The favorite in this race is going to be the number 4 horse Bellafina, and she's going to be a pretty prohibitive favorite at that. Before we dive into her past performances, though, I think we need to take an in-depth look at the Timeform US pace projector of this race and discuss it a little bit, because a number of horses that are projected to be towards the front end are the top contenders in this race, and the pace projector is predicting a fast pace with that red bar towards the top of the screen. The horse that is projected to be on the lead is the number 8 Motion Emotion, and if you've watched this filly's races at Oaklawn Park this winter, you know that she is pretty quick out of the gate and she will just run off on her riders. Mike Smith is the kind of rider that lets horses do what they're comfortable doing, so he is going to let her run off to the early lead, and she is likely to be chased by the number 7 Jaywalk and the number 13 Serengeti Empress. It is going to be really interesting to see what Jose Ortiz does with Serengeti Empress. She's coming off a poor effort in the Fairgrounds Oaks last time, but she is a filly that really needs the lead to run her best races. So will he try to secure the front for Motion Emotion? Will he be content to stalk that filly, or will they hook up on the front end and create an especially fast-paced situation? That could work against Bellafina, because Bellafina has run her best races when she is stalking the pace and really out in the clear. She's never really taken any serious kickback in her races, especially not this year, where she's gotten some very soft trips. She's projected to be 4th in this pace projector, and she could have to deal with some kickback on the front end if those 3 go out to the lead. Taking a look at Bellafina's past performances, look, she's the most talented runner in this race. I'm not disputing that. My real question is, can she produce her top effort, facing more adversity, shipping to Churchill Downs, and going this 1.125 distance? As a heavy favorite in this race, I'm a little bit skeptical, because while she's very effective in her one-turn races, I was really impressed with her Santa Ynez win going back to January 6th. The 1:18 Timeform US speed figure that she earned that day, if she were to repeat a number like that in this race, she would destroy this field. But the problem is, she hasn't run those fast speed figures in her 2-turn races, and especially not going 1.116. Her 1:08 Timeform US speed figure for the Santa Anita Oaks really doesn't make her much of a standout at all in this race. Actually, some other fillies have run faster in their final preps. She had to work pretty hard to win the Las Virgenes 2-back, and she was just beating an overmatched field in the Santa Anita Oaks last time. Fleur de Lamar, who was 2nd, is also in this race. If you look at her past performances, it's clear that she's not really a top contender and is not a filly that wants to go 2 turns. So I'm just a little bit skeptical that Bellafina is really going to offer any value at as short a price as she's going to be, and I want to take a shot against her in this race. There are a number of alternatives to consider. One that many might take a look at is the number 7 Jaywalk. She was last year's 2-year-old champion filly. She's lost both of her starts in 2019, and it's really hard to put a positive spin on those efforts. She was just really dull in the Davona Dale. She didn't show her customary early speed. She was stalking a slow pace, though, and she really should have forged past Cookie Dough at the top of the stretch, but instead that rival ran away from her. She was passed by Geltrin, who's also in this race, as well as Champagne Anyone. She came back in the Ashland last time, and she showed renewed early speed. She took the early lead in that race, but she didn't appear to be doing it quite as easily as she had as a 2-year-old. She wasn't coasting along out of the front end like she did in last year's Breeders' Cup. She came under a ride on the far turn, was passed. I thought she actually stayed on pretty well in the final 16th, gaining some ground on Out for a Spin and Restless Rider, and galloping out strongly across the wire. She's obviously a filly that can get the 1.125 distance. I'm just not sure that she quite possesses that spark that she had as a 2-year-old. John Service has said that she hasn't really gone on from a physical perspective from 2 to 3. And I'm just not sure we're going to see the same kind of effort that we saw out of her in the Breeders' Cup last November. The 2 fillies that interest me most in this race are Champagne Anyone and Lady Apple, and both of them should be square prices in this race. We'll begin with Champagne Anyone. She ran arguably the best last out race when she won that Gulfstream Park Oaks over Dunbar Road, who doesn't make it into this race. She's on the also eligible list. I really liked the way that she was more aggressive in blinkers last time. She's a filly that had gotten a little bit too far back in some of her prior efforts, was compromised by a slow pace in the Devona Dale 2-back. She was right up on top of the pace in the Oaks last time, forged the lead at the top of the stretch and held sway late. Dunbar Road was getting to her, but if you watch the gallop out of that race, Champagne Anyone never let that filly by and really maintained her advantage all the way out to the clubhouse turn. I don't think she's going to have any problem with the distance. I like the way that Ian Wilkes has been gradually stepping her up in distance throughout this prep season, and I think in some ways she's the horse to beat in this race because I trust her to put forth her top effort going the mile and an eighth, and she's going to get a more favorable pace setup than Bella Athena. I'm definitely using Champagne Anyone, but my top pick is the number 3 Lady Apple. She's a little bit slower than some of the top contenders, but I really like her trajectory coming into this race. You can throw out her 2-year-old performances because it turns out she's just not a sprinter. She really improved when Steve Asmussen stretched her out in distance in that allowance race 2-back at Oaklawn Park. They stepped her up in the fantasy last time, and I really liked what I saw out of her that day. She's a filly that had benefited from racing close to the pace in her prior starts, but they experimented with taking her farther off the pace in the fantasy, and she handled it without any serious issue. She stalked very kindly about 4 lengths off the pace, advanced around the far turn. She briefly had to wait for room and actually lost momentum at the top of the stretch when Ricardo Santana was trying to pick a spot to run through. He squeezed through a tight opening inside of Motion to Motion on the inside. Mike Smith really tightened it up on her at about the 8th pole, but I really thought Lady Apple showed a lot of grit and determination to get through that hole and open up in the late stages. As a daughter of Curlin, she strikes me as a filly that's not going to have any problem stretching out to the mile and an eighth distance. I like her inside post position because she can save ground once again in this race, and if she gets a similar kind of trip to the one she got in the fantasy, I think she's a real player in here. She's 20 to 1 on the morning line. I really don't think we're going to get a price quite that high, but if she's double-digit odds, anywhere in the 10 to 12 to 1 range, I think that's a fair price, and she's a horse that I definitely want to bet to win in this race. In exotics, I'll key her along with Champagne Anyone as my top 2 picks in exactas and trifectas, but my main strategy is to try to use these two to beat Bella Athena. So that's a look at the Kentucky Oaks on Friday at Churchill Downs. Now let's send it back to the studio.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for the Grade 1 La Troienne Stakes. Fillies and mares going a mile and a 16th for $500,000. $2.53 Eastern is the approximate post. This is race number 8 on the Kentucky Oaks Friday card at Churchill Downs. For expanded stakes previews of all the graded races all weekend long at Churchill, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike, morning line favorite, 5-2 on Secret Spice. Throw out the wet track race. You've got 2 triple-digit Beyer speed figure victories. Is she the goods?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll find out a little more about her, maybe. Based on those 2 speed figures, though, 106 and 100, the last 2 fast dirt races, I guess she should be the favorite. If she can run a triple-digit Beyer here, she's going to be very tough to beat. Of course, this game's not that easy. Let's go back and look at that Beholder Mile, though. This is a Grade 1 win for her. She got a perfect trip in this race. You're going to see her swing to the outside and run by a horse in Selcourt who can't put up a fight because she wants no part of this distance. She is already finished at the top of the stretch, and Secret Spice just does the rest from here. I got to say, guys, I wasn't blown away by this performance, but she did what she had to do, and she does have the figures on the way in.
Matt Teresa Z, the number 7, is one of my favorite horses in training. She is all racehorse, and I think last time out they were just prepping her in a sprint race to set her up for this. I like her at a little bit of a longer distance, but you give her some pace, she'll roll late.
Yeah, and I just think at a big number in a race like this where I just don't fear any of the short prices. I'm not terrified of any of them. They can all run well, don't get me wrong, but a horse like Teresa Z, I think she deserves a look here at 15 to 1. Let's go back to that inside information. And like you said, Dan, this is not what she wants to do. This is probably nothing more than a means to an end. But keep in mind, it was 7/8 of a mile, it was 1 turn, and it was Gulfstream. She has done most of her damage at longer distances. I agree with you. I'd like her even longer than a mile and a 16th, but I think she's got a big chance in here.
Yeah, and I agree with everything Matt said. I think they were prepping in that inside information, and I'm just hoping she got what she needed out of the race. Her 2-turn dirt form is very good, and I think on her best day, she fits really well with this field.
This is a very tough race, but I want to give a chance to the 3, Divine Miss Gray, who had a very productive 2018 for trainer Danny Gargan, a winner at Churchill Downs of a graded race around 1 turn, 3 starts ago. And then in her most recent race at Churchill Downs, they tried to stretch her out around 2 turns. It was the end of a long, grueling year, and I don't think she got the right ride. I think she was supposed to be forwardly placed. They took her back, and she didn't show that same pop. Gargan wisely stepped on the brakes. He gave her a little bit of a layoff. She returned at Aqueduct against a weak field on a wet track, but she did what she had to do. She returned to form with this gate-to-wire victory. She put up a nice Spire speed figure in the process, and now she's returning to Churchill Downs. The question of this race is, what kind of trip can she pull going 2 turns? She's probably at her best when she can get to the lead, and I'm not sure that's going to be the case with a couple of other speeds in here, but I think she'll be forwardly placed, and I trust Gargan in these situations. Divine Miss Gray's been a revelation ever since being claimed, and I think she's going to run a nice one in the La Troienne. We thank you so much for watching this special Kentucky Oaks edition of Out of the Gate, and remember, we still have the Derby Day edition of Out of the Gate coming up later this week on DRF TV. Follow us on Twitter at DRF Video. Follow Daily Racing Form on Twitter at DRF Inside Post. And again, you can catch all of our videos at video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. That's it for this episode of Out of the Gate, and best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.